Why is that? My name is Jared Wilson, and from a man's perspective, I'm happy to share my journey with the hopes of changing these statistics for the better, while uncovering the challenges and opportunities with all relationships. It doesn't matter if you're single, in a relationship, it's complicated, you're engaged, married, or divorced. Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Walk. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Walk. We are on episode 7. We're talking about sex and affection. Ooh la la, you know that little 3-letter word. So it's going to be a more mature episode, but we are mature. We're adults because we're serious about getting our relationship on track and doing the right things. So sex and affection is all about we are comfortable discussing sexual issues and affection. I know for Kiera and I, we did have this conversation early in our relationship because you never want to be in a point where something happens and then that's the first time you heard about X, Y, or Z that you probably should have known, but it was never brought up and they didn't know how to tell you and you didn't know how to tell them. And so it just happened organically and it happened at the wrong place, wrong time. So we're going to make sure we avoid all that because you're being, we'll just say proactive and making sure that you take your relationship serious. And even when it comes to health, STDs are a real thing. Unplanned pregnancies are a real thing. Getting pregnant by some person that you never wanted to be the dad is a real thing. So make sure that you have this conversation and you do take it seriously. There's nothing wrong by wanting to make sure that you are covered and you're prepared and you're doing the right thing. So we're going to talk on that. Let's hop into the facts from a relationship standpoint first and foremost. Fact number 1, 33% of couples state being too tired for sex is a key relationship conflict. So you had a long day, you worked all day, you come home, and you just want to go to sleep. That's a real thing. 28% of couples, fact number 2, 28% of couples state low sex drive as a cause for relationship stress. So some people use sex in different means. Some people use it as a form to relieve stress. Some use it because it's a show of love and affection. But the reality is when we talk about sex, which was the first word, I also brought up that second word, which is and affection. A relationship is so much more than just sex. And I'm saying that as a man. Like, I have no problem saying that. It's so much more in a relationship than just sex part. That's great. But as well, affection is what you're going to be doing. The reality is there's 24 hours in a day. Guaranteed you're not doing the first part 24 hours in a day. So just as much as you might do that, you still have to live with this person all the other hours of the day. So think about that, guys. Think about it. So we're going to get into an activity, which I think will be really interesting. It's a couple discussion, which I always enjoy because it just means you don't have to do anything extra. Just sit down with your partner, take out a pen and paper and answer questions. This is not an activity where you guys are going to answer them individually and come together. This is just going to be a free-flowing conversation between you and your spouse, or your partner, I should say. The reality is that you're using it because you just want to get more intimate with them, understand them better, acknowledge and talk about how you foresee this relationship moving going forward. And most importantly, just being prepared in the event that, you aren't waiting for marriage, you aren't using protected sex, that situations do occur. So let's talk about it. So what does sex and affection have to do on a couple discussion? First and foremost, question number 1. What does affection mean to you? Most guys are going to be like, affection means love. But we talked about, there's 5 love languages. Affection can come in a myriad of ways. For me, physical touch is one. And physical touch means, hey, you come in, you give me a hug, you put your arm on my shoulder. Oh, that makes me happy. My other love language is also, hey, you just tell me good things about myself. Words of affirmation. So, hey, Jared, I appreciate when you did this. Just telling me those things means a lot to me. So plain and simple, those are different ways of showing affection. For Kiera, it could be acts of service or it could be gifts. So if she comes home from a long day at work and I've already taken care of dinner and cleaned all the dishes, that takes a lot off her plate. She really appreciates that. It means the world to her. So that could be another way of affection. Affection can be sitting on the couch watching TV and I simply put my arm around her. Nothing else is going on, but that's another level of affection. So make sure you understand that when you talk about sex and affection, that it's very easy to talk about it in terms of what I like and what I want and how I foresee things. But very much what's more important is that you understand your partner and what they like. So that way you can make sure you're doing and showing them the affection the way that they need it, not the way that you expect to receive it. Question number 2. How much affection was there in your family growing up? And how did you respond to it or the lack of it? So go back, because the reality is everyone has history, and a lot of who we are as individuals dates back to what happened as a child and what our surroundings and our circumstances growing up. So, having a better understanding of your partner and where they come from, for example, were you in a family where every day you were told, I love you and give me a hug and a kiss? Or were you in a family where your dad never showed PDA? That makes a mark. That shows in your brain. Maybe it's your grandparents that you saw or your aunt and uncles that you're around and you saw their relationship and you're like, I want a relationship like that. And I love how they do this. Or maybe you saw someone else and you're like, I don't want to be like that. Have that discussion and just be open. It's not a judge session. It's about just understanding. Question number 3, more important and more specifically, how did your father and mother show affection? Because that matters. Perhaps as a guy, the way your mother showed affection is what you expect from your future bride to be or your wife. You expect that same level of affection that you got from your mom and from the daughters or from women. That could be the same thing from what you expect from the man. Number 4, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much affection do you want in your marriage? This is a great question because you understand. Maybe you're like, PDA, that's too much. It makes me weird. Maybe it could kind of show and help you, your partner, and you understand maybe why someone may come off more cold in certain circumstances or why they respond to certain things when you're out in public. Question 5. What was the attitude towards sex in your family? Was it discussed? How did you learn about it? And so forth. So, this is a great question too, because it lets you know what was the dynamic growing up. Did your family take the time to teach you about sex education? Did you learn it from school? Did you learn it because it was your first time? It just depends. You want to have that conversation though, because it helps shape the way of what your understandings are about it, what you know, what you don't know, and more importantly, what do you want it to look like? Of course, maybe down the road when you have kids, do you want to make sure they are aware of these things? And actually that last part about how did you learn about it? If you're like me and you had to learn from your dad, and it could be a terrible, tragic story that you never want to remember. So just depending on how it happens, it could be really interesting. Question 6, have you fully disclosed your sexual history to your partner? And if not, why not? So now we're getting real here. The reality is that, in my opinion, you should know what your partner's history is, sexual history is. It's not because you want to find out and be like, oh, well, now that I know that, I don't want to be with you. But the reality is you need to make sure you ask this question so your partner and whoever you're talking to has the opportunity for them to be forthcoming and tell you everything that may exist. The last thing you want to do, let's be real, STDs don't get spread because everyone says, hey, I have something, and the person is just okay with it. The reality is people don't always disclose what's going on or what their history was. And because of that, certain things happen that should never have happened. So make sure you have that conversation so that way you can understand and everything's out on the table. The reality is if you are here and you guys are truly working for something, you should know everything about that person. So there's never a surprise. There's never any secrets. And accept that of that person. The reality is what your past is, and maybe that's why you don't want to tell people is because you're ashamed of your past. The reality is whoever you were in your past is just that, in the past. Don't let your past dictate who you are now and who you're going to be going into the future. Remember that. Question number 7. Has lack of affection or sexual dissatisfaction ever been a factor for you in the breakup of a relationship? So this is a real question. So for women, ladies, for you guys out there, depending on how your man answers, this could be, or your partner answers, this could be a open or eye opener, or maybe it applies to you. Where, if this was the cause of a reason, you want to make sure you understand why. Was it a matter of, oh, I had to have it and the person didn't want to do it? Was it respecting boundaries? There's a lot of ways this can go, but you want to make sure you just have that understanding. So I know a lot of couples who they actually set up times or not necessarily schedule out per se, but they agree up front how many times per week, per month? Do we want to do this or whatever the case is? So that way the expectations are out there because it is a real thing. Question 8, discuss your views on pornography, strip clubs, whatever else you want to add on there. And this is a real question. I've seen so many times where I've seen women who are frustrated because their man loves to go to the strip club and they don't approve of it and so forth. I know in other circumstances where it's the other way around. I mean, that's a real thing. It's a reality. Make sure you have those discussions up front because maybe that's something you don't want in your household. You're not a fan of it. And that needs to be set up front so you never get, surprised and then find out on the back end. That's the easy one where it's not until it happens that somebody realizes they're mad about it because it was never discussed. And then lastly, and most importantly, have you discussed family planning and or birth control? And that's a far reality of this situation. There's so many people that are in, I don't want to say fortunate and unfortunate situations and circumstances because they never had this discussion. They laid with someone because it seemed like the right thing to do at that time. And of course, they never thought that each time you lay down with somebody, the reality is you got to think about what is the worst case. Is this somebody if this were to occur, that I can count on, that I would want to raise a child and bring a child into this world? Is this someone that I can trust, maybe knowing their history, that they don't have anything and that I won't catch anything? These are real conversations. We have to be adults about it. We can't shy away from it. And that's how ultimately we all stay safe. We all stay protected. And most importantly, from a relationship standpoint, you and your partner are in lock and key about where you stand, how you're moving, and you can avoid a lot of unnecessary drama, problems, or things down the road. So that's just me being real with you guys. But nonetheless, it's important for you guys to have that discussion if you're serious about your relationship and the direction you want it to go. So that's all for episode 7 on sex and affection. What we're going to do in our next episode is actually go into relationship roles and marriage expectations. So from Jared Wilson, this is The Walk. Stay tuned. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.